All right, what is up? Welcome in another episode of GC Live. He is Chris. I am Wes. Monday edition. No South Carolina game this past weekend, of course, but we're going to go ahead and get a little look to LSU. Big weekend ahead for the Gamecocks. Maybe talk a little bit about what else went on over the weekend as well and what it kind of means for South Carolina moving ahead to what is frankly a daunting 5-game stretch ahead for the Gamecocks. But first, let me tell you about our friend Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans. About to say a different name there. ClintHammond.com, 803-422-6797. NMLS number 71597. Again, ClintHammond.com is the website. If you want to get more information about what Clint does there, just head on over there or just give him a call, shoot him a text at that 803-422-6797 number. Like I always tell y'all, Clint is the guy if you are in the market for a new home or if you've just been, maybe you're a renter, first-time home buyer, wanting to see what that would look like for you. He's going to look at your financial situation and let you know exactly what you need to know in terms of making that big step towards home ownership, just like he did for me a while back. So, again, hit up our guy Clint if that sounds like something you're interested in.
We're also going to tell everybody about our friends over at Ferry Chevrolet, ferrychevrolet.com. Wes, my graphic isn't working. Might need, there we go. Just a little delay. Live podcast. You know, that's how it goes. 803-937-4531. ferrychevrolet.com. If you're a South Carolina fan looking for a new or used vehicle with great service, check out our friend Joseph Ferry, 4th-generation dealer, a business that's been around since 1926. And as y'all know, you can't be in business for like 100 years if you're not doing something right. Honesty, integrity, a handshake. They make the car buying experience easy. They make it worth your while to go check them out. Started in St. Matthews, but now located in Orangeburg off of I-26, conveniently right between Columbia and Charleston. So well worth your time to go down there. Or if you want to just give them a call and chat with them first, 803-937-4531. Financing options, of course, are available. And you can also check out their new and used inventory on ferrychevrolet.com. Go check them out today.
Obviously, appreciate both of those wonderful companies being sponsors of us here on GC Live. Chris, interesting Saturday despite South Carolina not playing ball. And, you just don't know what's going to happen. And we won't stay long on maybe some of these games, but I did think worth acknowledging because probably there's some big picture carryover to what we think about South Carolina and how they're going to maybe fare the rest of the way. If you told me before Saturday that, that Florida would beat Texas, I would have been mildly surprised. Like, I don't think there's any shock there. I think I even said, like, I don't think there's a ton. The way they had played so far, there was not really a ton of difference between those two teams. We just kind of believed that Texas is more talented and believed coming in they were going to get a lot more out of Arch, and thought we were going to get more out of Lagway, too, to this point of the season. And, I wouldn't have been shocked. But if you told me that UCLA was going to beat Penn State, shocked, surprised, floored, honestly. Like,
yeah.
that is a team that has looked kind of just dead in the water to this point, fired their coach, and, a Penn State team, much like I compare Penn State to Clemson, man. This is a team where everybody was talking about how many guys they bring back.
Yes.
Like this necessarily was not, or this wasn't necessarily like, oh, they went and got 38 guys from the transfer portal. Those guys are going to play early and help right away. And then you go, well, you can't rely on that. These are teams that just brought back key core contributors. And, neither team to this point, I know Clemson beat North Carolina, but that doesn't really say much this year. So neither of these teams, though, have lived up to that. But if you told me that they were going to go out there and use to this UCLA team, like, got to be the biggest upset of the season so far in my eyes.
Well, and what was the stat, Wes, that they showed during the broadcast and it's been talked about a lot afterwards? It's been, I think, 40 years since that type of game has happened. That type of loss has happened. Shocking, right? I mean, because I think what you maybe expected, if you were thinking that this was a trap game for Penn State, going across the country, playing a team where it's going to be a listless environment. There's not a lot of people in the Rose Bowl. It was almost like people heard about what was going on. It was like, hey, let's walk over. Let's go see what's going on. Let's go grab a ticket on gametime.co or something and go over there and check it out. It like built, but still at the end of the game, there weren't many people at that game. You kind of got to bring your own energy if you're Penn State. And so I wouldn't have been shocked if we were coming out of this thing and you're like, okay, Penn State won, but they looked pretty bad. They brought a C or D game, but they still won because UCLA is so bad. No, instead, they go and lose the thing, right? They build a big lead. What were they up 27-7? I think when you texted me the other day, old Saturday. Start paying attention. Penn State, starts mounting a comeback, but UCLA gets a big fourth down stop. They take the safety at the end. Penn State ends the game, kind of a microcosm of the entire game. They really don't get anything going on a lateral. They end up just ball on the ground, ball carrier on the ground, and that's the end of the game. And it is interesting, man, that, Penn State and Clemson got a lot of preseason love. And they were two of the teams that did maybe the best job in the country at retaining their talent from last year's teams, adding in some pieces, right? But retaining their talent. Those have been two of the biggest disappointments in college football. I don't think there's really anything to make of that per se. That doesn't mean, well, when you retain your talent, you're not going to be any good. I'm obviously not saying that. I just do think it's interesting. I think it's just a case-by-case thing. And man, there were a lot of jokes over the weekend about, hey, people said James Franklin couldn't win the big game, so he just went and lost to an 0-4 team and just destroyed that narrative. First time, for UCLA, you couldn't draw it up any better. You got an interim coach in Tim Skipper, who used to be on Jim McElwain's staff at Florida. You got a first-time play caller in Jerry Neuheisel, who's the son of Rick Neuheisel, who used to be the head coach at UCLA, right? Just so many different things going on there. And I mean, for Penn State, lowest of the low, after the weekend. So that was certainly a shocking result.
Did I mishear, or did like Jerry Neuheisel basically say he's like not only never called plays before, but was just kind of like basically PlayStation controller dialing these things up on Saturday?
So he said he didn't really know how to use the headset. Like he kept like saying stuff and then he wouldn't be hitting the button, so it wasn't going through. He said they had 2 days to practice the game plan, and I don't know. It's just like a perfect storm, right? And Nico, to his credit, I said some things about Nico leaving Tennessee. Everybody's poked fun at him for leaving a good situation. It seemed like going to UCLA, going 0-4, taking the bag, whatever it may have been. He had a great game. I mean, he really did. He was the difference in that game. UCLA goes down and scores. They get an onside kick. Penn State looks total. I know James Franklin said, we talked about that all week. They had nobody within 20 yards of the onside kick attempt. It wasn't even close. So a lot of people, rightfully so, talking about that result. They've got reason, I think, to be upset about that one.
Are you buying in? And I actually think I maybe am. I'd love to see some of the data on how these teams are affected by the travel.
Yeah.
Like, now you can't say that if you're a coach. Like I know that Franklin has already taken some heat. That was one of the things he mentioned. It comes across 100% as an excuse.
Yes,
We had to travel too far, guys. Well, you specifically maybe didn't make that decision, but your conference did make that decision. The conference you're in, which is made up by, in some ways, all the presidents, and supposedly your school had some say in all this. maybe you didn't have much power, but you at least had a voice, and your conference said, hey, we're going to add these other teams, even if it doesn't make a ton of sense in terms of geography. I mean, the ACC had Duke playing Cal yesterday. Like, we have jumped the shark on some of this stuff. Like, it is ridiculous. But part of the reason why, I guess it would have been last week, after Illinois looked terrible against Indiana, that I picked Southern Cal to lose to them. One, I was like, well, they're not going to play that terrible 2 weeks in a row. Two, Southern Cal typically will have just a couple stinkers, it seems like, under this staff. But the travel, man, like, it does seem to affect the away team quite a bit, especially when they're not used to it. And I wonder how much that's already, like, baked into the betting lines, like how much they factor that in. Is it still just your traditional 3 points, or is that something that they have to maybe structure it even more towards the home team if you're having to travel across so many, like traveling across time zones and stuff, basically?
Yeah, I'm with you. Fans don't want to hear it, right? Like for Illinois the week before, and I don't think Brett Bielema has said anything about the whole travel thing for Illinois. I know Lincoln Riley has at Southern Cal, James Franklin has. But, for Illinois, when you get beat by Indiana, you didn't play that game in California or Alaska or wherever. You just got destroyed. And so, I think people, if James Franklin had traveled and played, Southern Cal, people might go, okay, I buy the travel thing. But you're going out there and you're playing an 0-4 UCLA team who, as you said, had already fired their coach. That same field, Wes, New Mexico came in and absolutely put it on the Bruins, right? So it doesn't hold water. If I'm a coach, I'm going to PR. I'm not even mentioning that. Given what you should. If you want to mention it, if you're going out there again playing Southern Cal, if you're playing a team who's in the top 25, something like that, yeah, okay, bring it up. Even if you think it had a huge effect, you don't bring it up. If New Mexico can go into Los Angeles and win it, what'd they win by 21, something like that? I mean, it wasn't even close. Then you don't really have you can't use that as an excuse, even if you think it was an excuse or a primary one. You just can't do it.
Florida State, Miami, kind of honestly, dude, I was excited about that game. Picked FSU in the upset at home. Man, Miami, I know it ended up being closer at the end than it really was, but and turnovers were big in the game, but Miami looks good, dude. Like they look legit. Speaking of a quarterback we all kind of made fun of, Carson Beck.
Yeah.
Dude, he looks like an NFL guy to me right now. I happen, you know how YouTube TV has the little like 4-box thing?
Mm-hmm.
I ended up on that with a couple of games, and for some reason, the default one was for that game was the ACC network version of it, and so they had it was actually kind of cool. They had Jimbo was on there, and it was kind of like,
could you keep up? Could you understand him?
He slowed it down a little bit for me, actually. I was kind of happy.
He played at half speed.
Yeah, he was enunciating a little bit for us.
Oh, wow.
I was like, okay, Jimbo. But it was kind of like the version of the thing they do on National Championship where they have all the coaches in there and stuff. And so Jim, I mean, he was talking over the play-by-play person like the entire time. He'd be like, he'd see something and be like, "Oh, Mills play." Oh, like he'd like call out what he was seeing.
Yeah.
Oh, they're blitzing. Nope, they're backing out. But it was actually really good. But there would be times where, like on one of the plays in particular, they showed full like cover zero, all out blitz, and the call they had on was for that look basically, and then Florida State dropped out completely. So they had a bad call on for what the defense was, and Beck, it was just like he went through his reads like boom, 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 and then just flipped it out on the completely other side of the field. And Jimbo was pointing all this out. He's like, if you have a quarterback like that as a play caller, where you can be wrong
Yep.
and you're still somewhat right. Like he got the ball out. They got it positive for 3 or 4 yards as opposed to incomplete, or maybe a young quarterback, you forced the ball. You know, I was one of the people that was kind of shocked with how bad Carson Beck played last season at Georgia, seeing the progress he had made the season before. And but man, it's one game, but really to this point this season, you look at what he's done. I just hadn't watched them a ton until this past Saturday. Like I look at it right now, I think Ohio State and Miami, then maybe Oregon are like the 3 best teams in college football right now. Now,
Yep.
there's a couple in the SEC that still are unblemished, but I can't in good conscience put like Ole Miss or A&M on that level yet.
Not yet.
But Miami may be the number 1 or 2 team in the country right now.
Well, and that's, the AP poll came out, and Ohio State, Miami, Oregon, 1, 2, 3. Ohio State, I feel like they're not being talked about enough because people are just kind of taking for granted. I mean, Wes, 42-3 over Minnesota just to complete. I actually watched PJ Fleck's press conference after that game just because I wanted to see what he said. And I mean, he was very measured, very upfront. They just beat it. All 3 phases, they just beat us. Their defense has been incredible. They're just rolling through people. They look really, really good. So yeah, Miami, I mean, what we've seen, man, and there's a little bit of that element of with Mario Cristobal, fair or not, are they going to have that egg that they lay at some point? Probably fair, right?
Yes, they probably will.
They probably will, like if history shows. But when you look at them, Beck's playing at a high level. They've got that swagger back from a Miami team. Like they're tough, physical. Man, did you see Malachi Toney, their young wide receiver?
Bro.
This guy's an absolute stud. Might be the best receiver in the country. One of the best receivers in the country, I think, already. So they're very impressive. And, look, a lot of good teams in the SEC, man, because there's a lot of teams in the SEC that are undefeated. Ole Miss, A&M, Oklahoma. Oklahoma's defensive stats, Wes, are absolutely insane with Brent Venables taking that defense back over. They won handily against, I know, Kent State, playing a backup quarterback. We'll see if they get Mateer back. But certainly you look at that Oklahoma-Texas game, and given how much trouble Texas had offensively going against a Florida defense that's actually been very good this year, they couldn't get much of anything going. And you look at that thing and go, okay, that's a game where Oklahoma can wreak some havoc. And if they can just score some points, even if Mateer's not on the field, they could win. So still a lot of, a bunch of teams in the top 10, top 15, top 25 for the SEC. But I think I'm with you right now, just through 5 weeks, through 5 games. I like those 3 that are at the top right now as the best. Now that may change, next week, next couple weeks. And I think it does drive home a point, Wes, which I'm sure we'll get into. I might be jumping ahead. South Carolina, these next 5 weeks, they play number 4, number 5, number 6, number 8, and number 11. 5 SEC teams, all ranked in the top 11 with a combined record of 23-2. That's the 5-game stretch for South Carolina coming up.
Yeah, let's talk about that. First of all, let me also say, Ruben Bain for Miami.
Oh,
good Lord. That's another reason, man. They got a couple of little difference makers on defense that you go like, all right, these are guys that are built different. And he's definitely up there as easily one of the best pass rushers in the country. But yeah, let's talk South Carolina. Let's try to bring this back home a little bit and localize it a little bit. Man, you just laid it out there. We knew this stretch would maybe even define South Carolina's season, and we knew it was probably going to be just a tough stretch. I don't know if we quite assumed and thought. Certainly, I can tell you after Alabama got smoked by Florida State, we didn't quite think the 5 games as a whole was going to be, quite like this because Alabama just did not look the part. Well, they have rebounded exceptionally well. We'll get into them in a second. Let's just go in order. We'll talk about LSU, obviously, guys, throughout the week, but let's go ahead and do a little quick preview here. They are number 11. The only thing about that is, quite obviously, you're going on the road to LSU at night.
Yep.
And if you just gave me these teams on a neutral site and said which one is, and it doesn't mean it's going to be easy by any means, which would be the easiest matchup, which would be the best matchup for South Carolina, neutral site, no advantages to the location, I would probably say LSU. AP poll agrees with that just by the numbers as well, because they have not lived up. I was kind of diving into some of their numbers already, man. It does paint the same picture that you'll see if you've watched them this year. Their offense has just not been good, man. Like, it just really hasn't. And, I have kind of ridden the wave on Garrett Nussmeier. When he first took over, I was kind of going, well, a lot of times when these guys have to wait this long to take over, there's a reason for that. And, I was kind of thinking, well, maybe he's more of a game manager. I watched him rip some throws at Williams-Brice Stadium last year, tight windows, maneuvering in the pocket, different arm slots, throwing guys open. And I was like, dude, this guy is a top 15 pick. Similarly, though, what was that, A&M last year? He's throwing the ball directly into coverage, kind of just giving that game away. And then you look this year, it's just different. He just has not been right. And if you look at what they do statistically in the passing game, man, they have just not had success throwing the football down the field. And you got to think that is at least partially related to the fact he has not been 100%. And one of the biggest storylines of this football game is very clearly going to be how close to back to quote-unquote normal is Garrett Nussmeier going up against South Carolina's defense. It very, very easily could be the difference in a touchdown or two, I feel like.
Well, and the added benefit of they also had a bye week this past week, so Garrett Nussmeier did not have to go out there and play. Brian Kelly, LSU's head coach, is saying that he's on the tail end of what are we calling it, Wes? Because it's not a core injury, but it's an abdominal strain.
It's an ab injury, not a core injury.
Okay. All right. So we'll need, a physical therapist or a doctor, ortho, somebody to lay out the differences for us, because I sure don't know. But supposedly on the tail end of it, resting. So, from that standpoint, you always want every player in college football to be healthy and out there. Maybe not so good news for South Carolina, because you'd love to face somebody who's, a little bit more limited, especially someone like him. But I think there's a few different things in play, Wes. I mean, first of all, LSU had one of the best offensive lines in the country last year, led by Will Campbell, who's a first-round pick. Really, really good player. One of the better lines, maybe the best in college football. They lost, I think, four of 5 of those starters. So that's been an issue. You've got Nussmeier not quite being himself. And I think being banged up, playing hurt, you can bake that in at least some percentage to that. They also haven't run the ball extremely well. They've got some running backs for sure. I mean, you look at LSU, you always think of LSU traditionally as they're always going to have some stud running back. They got Caden Durham, who's a really good player. He kind of had his breakout actually last year against South Carolina when they started running the ball with success late. They got Harlan Berry, the former number 1 running back in the country, as a freshman. They've got some guys. It just hasn't clicked yet for them. I think they're certainly a lot better on defense than they were last year. We'll get into this throughout the week, but defensively, they do some things that South Carolina's really struggled with this year. So especially on the road, that's a big concern. But offensively, you're looking at it going, okay, there's a chance here for South Carolina to make some things happen with the Gamecock defense. So That's, of course, a big storyline. Going into this one, still a really talented team, still a difficult road environment. But I'm with you. I think as far as the matchup itself, the two teams, that might be like your best on paper chance for a win. But then you put it on the road in Baton Rouge at night, and you might end up picking another team, maybe one of the home games. So if that's your quote unquote easiest game, that's not easy at all, and you're not favored in that game, you're double digit underdog. That just illustrates how tough this stretch is.
Yeah, I mean, your next worst opponent in terms of AP ranking and a game that would be at home is number 8 Alabama. And
Yeah.
Ty Simpson, for my money, is playing about as well as any quarterback in the country right now. He has been fantastic. And, to me is a little bit like Carson Beck right now in that he's just knows where he needs to go with the football, can run it just enough, and can maneuver, but is always looking to get the ball down the field. We'll get into that here in a second. Let's go in order. Oklahoma. Let's just go kind of quick hitters here, and then I want to talk a little bit more about kind of South Carolina at the bye. Oklahoma, number 6, at home. Similar situation there, though. All eyes will be on this quarterback situation in terms of health. And, John Mateer way up there in the stats in terms of like passing yards per game. I think he's leading the SEC, over 300 passing yards per game coming in. Chris, very smooth, very easy transition, to the SEC has been exactly what Oklahoma needed. Let's be honest. Getting better play from receivers there as well. Getting not outstanding offensive line play, but clearly enough for him to drop back and get the ball out and deliver it all over the place. That was the other thing that Jimbo mentioned with Carson Beck. Your O-line and your quarterback are tied together, man. If your quarterback can get it out quick and can go through those reads quick enough, you naturally just do not have to have as long for them to get the ball out, So I think that's something when you have a veteran guy, that's been huge. We know how bad Oklahoma's offensive line was last year. That has been huge for them this year. I don't know about you, man. Just gut feeling and reading everything that's out there and just looking at the timeline, I fully expect Mateer to be suited up in Columbia in a couple of weeks and South Carolina to be dealing with him. I don't even know if that's worth diving into at this point. Like, if he plays, he's phenomenal. He's a great player. I don't know if I would even have anything to add to that right now. My big thing goes back to what you talked about, and that is how well their defense is playing. And we know what issues Carolina has had up front. Dealing with a Venables defense that has the talent to do what he wants to do, knowing the issues South Carolina has had up front.
Yeah. No, I mean, and one quick note on Mateer. I think Brent Venables said after the Kent State win, 44-0, Michael Hawkins Jr., who started the game against South Carolina last year and had difficulties, did a pretty good job in that game. He said that his expectation, he didn't say, I don't expect Mateer to play. He kind of made it seem like they're operating as if Mateer is not going to play in their next game, which is against Texas, of course. But we'll see. I mean, given that timeline, Mateer could be back. I think if you're asking Shane Beamer and the staff, they're probably preparing for John Mateer. But they're going to have their hands full enough with Oklahoma defensively. And I think that was the key for them going in, Wes. You always expected a Brent Venables team to field a really quality defense. Last year, when they struggled as a team, they still had a good defense. Well, they've been better this year because one reason, they're able to play better complementary football. Their offense is more than adequate. They're very capable of being quite good offensively as opposed to incompetent as they were last year. But man, you look at their statistics as of yesterday, they are number one, not only in the SEC, but in the entirety of college football, the NCAA, in total defense, opponent yards of play, sacks a game, tackles for loss a game, third down conversion percentage, forced punts a game, and they're top 2 to top 5 in a bunch of other ones. I mean, it's extremely impressive. Wes, 17% on third downs for opponents. Completely insane. So that is a tall order, to say the least, when you're going up against this Oklahoma defense, and that's to say nothing about John Mateer in that offense.
That may be one of the best third down conversion defensive percentages I've ever seen, like over a decent period of time. Like, we're not talking about a one game stretch here at this point. If we're kind of looking at these 5 games as a whole at this point, man, that's to me one of your biggest just matchup concerns overall is their ability to just like not only stifle, but just trying to think of the word, man. It's like it's like a boa constrictor just like taking your will away when the numbers look like that. And that against a South Carolina offense that, as we know, has just not been efficient. Like, it's not been able to get away from kind of this boomer bust. They did a little bit against Kentucky, but overall this year, it's been a lot of boomer bust. So that type of defense can be very frustrating to face if that is the case for your offense. And then, Chris, to kind of tie these two together, man, LSU, the fact that you're playing that game at night, I think is maybe even more of a factor than it is some years, just because how many issues, we've talked about it for much of the last month, how many issues has South Carolina had with just pre-snap, false starts, pre-snap, not getting guys lined up correctly. And some of that was at home. To me, that's already going to be one of the biggest keys to this game this Saturday is, can you operate? And I don't even mean efficiently, like once the play is snapped. Can you operate efficiently in terms of just the basics, getting lined up and giving yourself a chance? I think for Carolina, dealing with like the elements of this game, it will maybe be the difference in if you do give yourself a chance. Like on the field, like 11 on 11, I don't really think it's that bad of a matchup, but it's, can you deal with all the things around it and just get to your plays will be the difference in whether you have a chance in this game or not, man.
Well, and I think that's going to be the case throughout this 5-game stretch. We saw, like, was the offensive performance tremendous against Kentucky? No, because we still came out of that thing going, all right, didn't run the ball great. I know that they had a couple possessions stolen from them because the defense scored, which is, you'll take that all day long. But Carolina had its best performance, I think, of the season. And what was the common thing? Well, they stopped doing a lot of the things, at least in that 1-game sample size, that have plagued them all year. They just had one false start. Yeah, they didn't run the ball well, but they were able to put together 16-play, 9.5-minute drive at the end of the game when Kentucky knows you're running the football, where you're just salting it away. You didn't have as many negative plays running the football. You had a lot of 1- and 2-yard runs, but you'll take that as opposed to losing 5 yards or, taking multiple sacks where you're now behind the chains. They still had a 3rd and very long situation against Kentucky, but they were able to eliminate those or really cut those down. And that is going to help your offense, especially when you have 16, when you have Lenore Sellers. And so that's the top, that has to be top of mind for you. We're going to dive into in each of these 5 matchups, the different individual matchups, Carolina's offense versus the defense. What does that look like? Sure, schematically, personnel. But for Carolina, the biggest overarching theme of this season is really, number one, the self-inflicted stuff, right? And they're able to cut back on that against Kentucky and have a better performance. That's what they're going to have to do just as your baseline starting point. If you don't do that, especially with some of these defenses that they're going to play, like Oklahoma, the defense is going to absolutely feast on you. If you're sitting out there starting 1st and 15, 2nd and 20, you've absolutely got to avoid that in this stretch as much as you can.
Yeah, and on the other side, man, the thing with self-inflicted penalties is that it doesn't even matter who the opponent is. Like a false start is a false start, regardless of who is on the other side. And it's a type thing where I look at like just a daunting Oklahoma defense and a good LSU defense. Then as we move it forward to Alabama in that game, in that matchup, that is a home game. What stands out to me about that game is more Alabama on offense. And I realize when I say this about a defense um, of Alabama that I don't put on the same plane as Oklahoma. You're still talking about a defense that is surrendering 16 points a game. So it's not. It's kind of one of those things, like we say, where there's levels to this. Like, in no way are you looking at this Alabama defense and going, "Well, they're pretty bad on that side of the ball. They're terrible." Not the case at all. But just in terms of context and comparably, comparing them to some of these other games, you're probably going to look at it and say, hey, we at least think if you play pretty well, you're going to have a chance to move the ball at home against this Alabama defense. And you partially say that because, man, I think you're going to have to. Like, that's just like, I think you look at Alabama offensively, and it's one of those things. You go into some games where you say they're going to get theirs to an extent. And that's the way I look at Alabama's offense right now, with Ty Simpson playing as well as he's playing. You know, what they have at the skill positions, kind of the way they've been able to get going. One area of the Alabama defense that does just raise a huge kind of alarm bell, I think, is they've surrendered 155 yards per game on the ground. So that is very just not Alabama-like for what we think of them traditionally, certainly during the stretch with Nick Saban. And so I look at that game where you're going to go, hey, this one's going to have to be on Lenore Sellers, going to have to be on that offense to put up some points because, if the defense holds them to 24 points or something, you probably feel pretty good about that. Like, that would be a good day at the office because I think they're playing about as well as anybody on offense right now when you look at who they've gone against. And Ryan Grubb, their offensive coordinator, he just does a really good job of throwing some just different crap at you, like like you're going to get some looks that you have not seen on tape, and you're going to have to be ready for those things.
No doubt. He's got Caden Proctor, their left tackle, going in motion or throwing screens to him. But I think
handed it off to him this week too.
Handed off to him this week. Ty Simpson is the straw that stirs that drink because he finally threw a pick, Wes. First career pick. Had gone through the whole season without doing it so far. Alabama had not turned the football over offensively as a team, which is a crazy stat, up until the Vanderbilt game, and he finally threw one. Vanderbilt guy made a great play, just zone coverage underneath. I think didn't see him. And so that, if you're kind of making some early previews, you've got to find a way to affect Ty Simpson up front, and you're going to have to get some turnovers in that game. That's kind of your formula if you're South Carolina. If you just let him sit back there, this guy's a son of a coach, Jason Simpson. His dad's been the head coach at UT Martin for years, one of the longest tenured coaches in college football. He's just extremely bright, but he's also talented. He can make all the throws. To your point earlier, he can navigate the pocket. He can get outside, run a little bit for you, extend plays. If you let him sit back there, it is going to be a long day because he's just going to pick you apart. And so if you're Carolina, turnovers and finding a way to manufacture some pressure up front, that's going to be your ticket. Defensively, I agree with what you said. They're still a good defense overall. Vanderbilt would have had more points in this game if not for a couple turnovers. I think they were driving to score and turn the football over a couple times in that game on Saturday. I think the back end of their defense is really suspect in the run game. So if you can find a way to get to the second level, you got an opportunity for some big plays. That's something they pointed out on the broadcast. Vanderbilt had a long touchdown run, and it was really poor run fits in the secondary that did it from the safety position. So that's something that I'm sure South Carolina's keyed in on as well with an early look at this game.
Yeah, If there's an area they're vulnerable, it's that you're going to have to find a way to just put up some points and move the ball and score. And as we know, get the home crowd going. Always a big key if you're South Carolina at home. All right, we're taking way too long on each of these. I said we wouldn't, but real quick, Ole Miss, dude, one of the biggest storylines I think of this entire early season so far is the fact that we all kind of had Austin Simmons penciled in as Ole Miss's quarterback. Trinidad Chambliss has kind of taken over that spot and played very well. Ole Miss brought in all those guys from the portal last year. Had a really good team last year. I thought was maybe a dark horse for the playoff. Just lost a couple of games they shouldn't have. And now they're sitting there quietly undefeated this year. Been in a lot of close games, man. They really have. And I kind of go back and forth on Ole Miss. Like, is this going to be one of those things where this year's team is kind of who we thought last year might be? Or are they just a team that, we still don't know how good LSU is or isn't. Kentucky, they go up there, get in a tight game with them. Like, they really have just been in some close games. So, again, I don't want to go too deep into this because especially, things could change 4 times by the time this game gets here.
Probably will.
We may be saying Ole Miss is the toughest team on the entire schedule by this game, or they may have fallen back into territory of like, it could go either way. The biggest storyline there, though, is, hey, their offense continues to just do what they do under Lane Kiffin, and their quarterback position has played out really completely differently. I think even than what they thought internally.
Yep.
Unless you think this is one of those things where they're looking around though in preseason internally and they're like, man, Simmons is our guy. Like we've built him up to be the guy. And they're kind of looking around like, but this other kid,
yeah,
he's showing some stuff.
Yeah, that kid was all set to go to Temple, West, and Ole Miss stole him late. I think probably if I had my suspicions, a guy that Lane Kiffin said, I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up being our guy, right? And, kind of just good fortune thing for him where there was an injury. He stepped in and he's played extremely well. So another road game, Wes. And, last year, that was the worst performance for South Carolina against this Ole Miss team. I think, obviously, they're going to be a really difficult matchup when you're looking at Lane Kiffin's offense versus the defense. But they got some dudes on defense once again, too. It is on my radar that they've had a couple really close games. For South Carolina, can you turn this into a really close game that then you can go win? So, yeah, we'll keep an eye on it as that game gets closer, and of course, be able to break it down and see how our opinions have changed by the time it gets here.
Yeah, A&M going to A&M. It's going to be tough, man. We'll push that one aside too. And we'll talk about that later once we get a little bit closer. Michael, I believe, is disagreeing in the chat with Garnet Yardbird about Ty Simpson being a great ball player. Michael, I got to say, man, I kind of agree with Garnet Yardbird. Simpson is playing about as well as any quarterback in the country right now. Like if your picture in your head of him is what you saw against Florida State, which I understand completely, it's completely different now. Like this dude just looks completely in command of what they're trying to do on offense, and it's been really good just off platform as well and extending plays and getting the ball down the field. I also do kind of love the fact that he just stuck it out, waited his turn, developed, got ready. But he's not a game manager, man. Like this guy makes some plays, and I think has been if Alabama makes a run at this thing and truly is like a playoff team that could win the title, it is because Ty Simpson continues to play at the level that he has played at. Chris, we talked about some of this, man, on Thursday. But I do want to get in here before we close it out, just get into a couple of like bye week thoughts for South Carolina in terms of like, what do we want to see moving forward? What do we want to see starting on Saturday in terms of changes, in terms of tweaks, in terms of all the different things we may see from South Carolina? But first, let's tell everybody about a couple of our other great sponsors, our friends at Game Time, gametime.co, or do what we do, just download the Game Time app. Very, very easy to download this app and then get tickets to whatever you may be wanting to go to. Is that a college football game? Is that an MLB playoff game? Is it a concert? Shows? Basically anything. If it's ticketed, they have it for you here on Game Time. And couple of the awesome things about it, as soon as, I mean, it's like it knows you, man. As soon as I pull up the app, what does it pop up? Oklahoma at South Carolina football. It obviously knows I've looked up South Carolina football before. It knows that's a home game for South Carolina, and it pops it right up. You've got super deals that pop up. You've got zone deals where you can click that you are in a particular area of the stadium, but it's not going to tell you until the end exactly what ticket it is so that you'll get a better deal there. It's going to tell you which deals on here are top 1% value for all the tickets being sold at the time. And my favorite part about ordering on Game Time is the toggle on that says includes fees. That means you're going to know exactly what you're going to pay for those tickets right off the jump. You're not going to get hit by fees at the end. You're going to know the second you pick your seat. And also you get this awesome view of what the field looks like from your seat. So if you're looking for tickets for South Carolina football, concerts, events, anything else, head on over to gametime.co or just download the Game Time app.
All right, we'll tell you about our friends over at Palmetto Golf and Belts, too. Brandon Cohn, big Gamecock fan, longtime subscriber of GamecockCentral.com. Local storefront looks amazing. PalmettoGolfing.com. You can go there, check out his products, custom golf gear, towels, tees, needlepoint belts that are extremely well made. He's got a variety of designs. The needlepoint belts are awesome. You can wear them to church. You can obviously wear them golfing, wear them casual to work. That event that you have, he's got the cross design. He's got the palmetto tree and moon, the South Carolina blue, University of South Carolina themed garnet, so much more. You got a golfer in your life you're looking for a gift for, Christmas gift for somebody, or you're a golfer yourself, custom golf towels, tees, and much more at PalmettoGolfing.com. He's always got specials going on. The new storefront that he rolled out a while back looks amazing. So go check it out. Support the businesses that support us, support South Carolina fans, and Brandon Cohn. That's Palmetto Golf and Belts, PalmettoGolfing.com. Check them out today.
Check them out today. Chris, Gamecocks back getting ready this week for a return to the field against LSU. We'll have Shane Beamer on Tuesday, of course. Normal week for South Carolina football. From what I heard, a lot of the, as you would expect, a lot of the bye week work is kind of a back to fundamentals, especially on the defensive side, where you're going to want to remind guys about, tackling fundamentals, angles, stuff like that. Just making sure you kind of double down on some of those things that they really had to focus on coming out of Missouri and into that Kentucky game, because we know that, there were some issues in terms of fundamentals against Missouri. Well, in terms of rotations, personnel, tweaks, I know you and I wrote about this a little bit going into the weekend. What are maybe one or two things that you're focused on in terms of like changes we may see moving into this next stretch of the season?
One thing I'm wondering about is up front on the offensive line, Wes. South Carolina's worked some different combinations there, and going into the Kentucky game, you had some tweaks that were due to injury or just maybe due to performance. We saw RJ Newsome got the start at center. Nolan Hay, of course, had started the Missouri game for the first time and then had to exit that game due to injury. So they insert RJ Newsome, who was actually brought here to Columbia via the portal primarily to give them, yes, he could play guard or center. He ended up starting game one at guard, but the thought was, hey, this is a guy that could potentially play center for us as well. He got the start, and the staff actually named him as one of their offensive players of the week. They felt like that was a good fit for him. What else do we see? We don't know yet if Cason Henry will be back or not. When he's been in there, he's been the most consistent lineman, I think, for South Carolina, but he's had a couple of injuries that have kept him out throughout the year. What's Tree Babalade's role? Well, if Henry's not in there, maybe right tackle, maybe left tackle. We saw Jatavius Shivers get some run at the tackle position. Josiah Thompson, in the later half of the Kentucky game, exited, and you had Tree Babalade and Jatavius Shivers out there manning the tackle spot. So as they look to get the best 5 on the field, yes, health is going to weigh into that. But as they go back and review these first 5 games during the bye week, as they continue diving into their self-scouting, what does that combination end up being? We laid out earlier, Wes, a lot of these defenses you're going to face, the procedural stuff that's plagued them. You're going to have a tough challenge in these next 5 games. So obviously getting better up front is going to be critical, not just to run the ball better, to protect the quarterback better, but really just the procedural stuff. I think they're going to be taking a close look at that. So that's something that's really on my radar now that the LSU week is here. What does the offensive line look like from a personnel standpoint?
Yeah, and I kind of made the point in what we wrote, man. I think a lot of it is going to be you're doubling down on some of the changes we've already seen. That you kind of just laid it out on the O-line, but we've seen that at other positions too. Like we already saw Brian Rowe getting more reps at kind of that slot position at receiver. We saw, Vandrevius Jacobs was kind of rotating early. Then he played so well against Missouri. He gave himself, by going out and earning it, more reps. And then he goes out and does it against Kentucky as well. So you're already seeing some of those tweaks. We already saw Justin Okoronkwo kind of subtly move from being the backup, one of the backups in that 3-man linebacker rotation, to now he's playing the most snaps. That's one thing, man. Just kind of asking around just a little bit. I think there's some excitement about the way J.O. is playing right now within the program. Like the kid is really just kind of hit the ground running in terms of making plays and just being where he's supposed to be. And Chris, he's not leading the team in tackles right now. I actually wouldn't be surprised by the end of the year if we were talking about J.O. as the leading tackler, because he only has 1 missed tackle on the season so far. And you're not talking about a guy who has 1 missed tackle in like 5 attempts. It's like 1 missed tackle in like 20 attempts. So has been outstanding. We knew the athleticism, the length. We knew he would get to the ball, but he also is showing he knows what to do when he gets there, and has been able to get guys on the turf. So that's interesting to me. I think a kind of a storyline this year so far, your defensive tackles, that was a question coming in, man. Those guys have played pretty well, frankly. Your backup edge guys, Chris, have actually played pretty well. I feel like JT Gear has been incredibly productive when he's been on the field. Desu has made the most plays of his career. That was something we all had questions about. Those guys have played pretty well. On defense, yes, you're going to be making little tweaks. I think a lot of it is, though, like, can you continue this momentum you have individually and just get it to be a little bit more consistent overall in terms of like the actual output? Because there's been a lot of really positive individual plays so far on defense. You'll get Judge Collier back, I feel like, in more of like a full-time role. He it felt like 2 weeks ago, Chris, they were like, all right, let's just get Judge back in, get him, let him knock off some rust. I think he played like 18 snaps or something in the game. I think that was good for him to get back out there. Dude, I am a little bit curious. Do we see some tweaks in the secondary? And what does that look like? DQ Smith is going to be on the field. Who's going to be at safety beside him? Because you've seen, Peyton Williams has been the starter. Like, he's been the guy there. He's done okay. You've seen Gerald Kilgore start to make some plays. But also, man, Collier's going to be on the field at corner. You know that Jalen Kilgore has to be on the field. And you know that Cisse has to be on the field. Too good not to be. And Cisse's been such a good tackler. But I want Vakari Swain on the field too.
Yeah. Well, and I thought, David Busey's made some plays at safety.
Yeah. So what do those rotations look like? And I know the staff has like pushed back on this from the very beginning. Do we see any at all of Jalen Kilgore at safety with Cisse at nickelback in order to get Cisse, Jalen, Vicari, and Collier all on the field at the same time. They've not wanted to do that, it seems. But, man, Cisse is too good not to be on the field. And we knew he was going to be – we thought he was going to be good. But he's, like, risen to – he needs to be on the field at all times except when he's winded level, I think. So what tweaks do they make there with a bye week in order to do so? Because the defense, there's been some really good things there, man. There really have. I think the key to this 5-game stretch is can they just tweak it enough that it all kind of just comes together?
Yeah, I think consistency is a word you used, and that's what you got to find, because it has been inconsistent at times. You look at the Missouri game, you have a lot of really good, and then you have a lot of really bad, right? Particularly in the run game. You look at the Kentucky game, first couple drives, first one really bad because you gave up a touchdown immediately. They're driving the ball down the field, but then you hold them to a field goal. Then you're able to turn it around. Then you're able to earn the right to rush the passer, which they did, and they were able to make things happen. I do still think, Wes, this is a defense that if you look at them from like a theme standpoint, they are going to be relying on turnovers. I think this is not a defense that's just going to totally shut teams down, and teams are going to have, Oklahoma-like numbers, 20%, 15% on third down conversions. I don't think this defense is built that way. I think this is a defense that needs to get more consistent in stopping the run and then being able to lean into what they do best. What's the strength of this defense? Well, if they can go rush the passer with Dylan Stewart, JT Gear, some athletic linebackers, and then go cover on third downs, I think that's the one area you look at. Can they be better and more consistent at tackling and stopping the run up front? So I imagine that's a lot of the work that's being done in the bye week, and that's certainly going to be a focus against LSU. And then in this 5-game stretch, consistency, I think, is the key word, for this defense.
Yeah, and I think it is one of those things where you're in position to make a lot of these plays, which if you're just not able to physically get in position to make the plays, that's a completely different issue. If you're in position and not always finishing plays, it's frustrating, I'm sure, but at the same time, maybe lends to it being a little bit more fixable, I think, moving forward. And, we saw some of that against Kentucky, but it was Kentucky, man. They struggle. So can they continue to kind of move that forward? We'll see. All right, y'all. I think that's it for today. But I got to share a couple of quick things, man. Chris, have you seen this tweet? Who is Ross with these days? He's with 24/7 Sports. That's fine. Ross Martin from 24/7 UNC site. Have you seen this tweet? You would know what I was talking about if you.
I was just looking at it. Yep.
All right. According to Ross, who says, according to sources inside the UNC football program, it is a directive from the staff, parentheses, Bill Belichick, to not tweet or retweet anything New England Patriots related. That's clearly why UNC football has not posted anything from Drake May's electric primetime win over the Buffalo Bills. Has there been a more disastrous big name hire in the history of football than this one? I also think this is hilarious. Ross, under this tweet, he says an in-depth examination of what's going wrong in the Belichick and Michael Lombardi era at UNC. And he gives, like a lot of people do, including us, the little headers of all the things he's going to talk about in the piece. And the headers are roster building, arrogance, transfer portal, quarterback, 2026. Apparently the entire year went wrong. Administration, board of trustees. What has gone right in Chapel Hill? Absolutely nothing to this point.
Absolutely nothing. Yeah, they're terrible, man. I mean, you watched it this weekend. They're just bad. And, part of you wonder, okay, in the NIL era, they're bringing in this GM, college athletics, college football, obviously more professionalized. So hey, maybe they'll be able to, if you were talking yourself into the Belichick era, which I didn't. Okay, you got a guy who's a bright football mind, obviously. And can they bring this model to where in the NIL era, they're going to be able to understand paying players, basically? I mean, let's just call it like it is. What you got there, Wes? Oh, they just send something out?
They have since posted a Drake May highlight
Nice.
from yesterday. Sorry to cut you off.
No, you're fine. But it has not worked, right? Like if you're looking at it going, why don't they have players? You know, and they're bragging on how good they're going to be in this era, how they're going to be able to get players. They're very deficient in the area of players, you know, and that's not even to touch the coaching aspect, which I'm sure that's playing into it. I'm not a North Carolina football expert, but when I watched them on the field this year against Clemson, against TCU, you're going, they just don't have many players. That's what you were supposed to bring, you know, with this model. You're supposed to be able to understand that. It's been a all systems failure, I think, so far.
Yes, it has. All right, y'all. We're completely out of time. When you get out of here, shout out to all the former Gamecocks though, just showing out yesterday. Spencer Rattler, who's played very well this year, first NFL win. Rico Dowdle, one of the most underrated Gamecocks in recent memory, has a huge day. Xavier Leggett, a couple of catches and a touchdown. Sure, there are some other guys too, man, but those few guys just stand out completely. So shout out to those guys. Big Sunday for them in the NFL. Thank y'all for joining us this morning. He is Chris. I'm Wes. We'll be back later this week. Jack will be back with Kendall for the midweek edition of the show. Then Chris and I will be back on Thursday to give our final preview and in-depth breakdown of South Carolina versus LSU. Again, thank y'all. For Chris, I'm Wes, and we'll see you then.